Yes, we have with us today Madis Vasser, who is an expert on the nuclear reactors, especially the small modular reactors. He made a presentation in the Litteraturhuset on the 27th of October, and now we have some follow-up questions for him.
Yes, thanks for having me. Yes, this last 7 years or so, I've been following the Estonian nuclear debate, which has really circled around the SMR question. Are they feasible in Estonia? Are they recommended in Estonia? Where they could be built? What's the benefits? What are the risks? So I've been involved in many levels, both in the governmental working groups, in the civil society, and on the academic research as well.
Yes, great. Maybe we can start with some of the basic statements from the supporters of nuclear energy. For instance, that it's safe. Because it is stated that very few people died from the accidents that have been happening, and the new SMRs are even more safe than the previous ones. So what is your understanding of the current situation?
Yeah, one way to describe it might be that they could be safer than previous technologies when we're talking about these SMRs. And there also you have to really look into it, like what are actually proposed technology-wise. So it could be these fourth generation reactors which are using these more exotic designs. Without going very technical, there are these ways to cool the reactor that are not based on light water designs. So this would be cooling with salt or with gases or other more fancy approaches. So these have some theoretical benefits, but they're still very far away from actually being anywhere near developing or deployment. So usually currently the SMR discussion, when it's about projects being actually built in the next decades, it will be the same third generation reactors as we have seen them today in the large reactors, but only on a bit smaller scale. And the safety question is complex because in one sense these reactors are smaller, so there's less nuclear material inside them. On the other hand, the developers of these reactors try to make them cheaper, and one of the ways to make them cheaper is to make them simpler. And you make them simpler by eliminating some of the safety features that the large reactors have. And now what regulators around the world are really asking now is that, okay, these new design innovations, are they actually safe? Do they stand up to these tests, these claims of passive safety where humans do not need to intervene when something goes wrong? They sound good on paper, but on actual tests, it's not so clear yet. And that's one of the reasons why none of these designs that are on the table have not actually been stamped approved yet, because the safety features have not been kind of thoroughly shown to actually do what they are promising to do. And on the health issues, or what's the current health impact of nuclear energy, it's difficult to say because it's very diffused. It's spread out over time and over large distances. So it's very hard to connect like some accident in point A to some occurrence of cancer in point B. So there have been studies showing that the people living near the power plant might have a higher risk of cancer, for example, and like debates are ongoing. Like, is there a safe level of radioactivity or not? So I would say yes, people don't die directly from like being hit by nuclear energy, but ways how they get affected either health-wise or livelihood-wise or like their life-wise. So Fukushima disaster is fresh still in people's minds. There we could see that even now, more than 10 years after the accident, many people still haven't moved back to their hometowns. So that's definitely been a toll on their health as well, mental health and financial health and so on.
Right.
So we need to kind of evaluate all of these aspects when we are discussing new nuclear. And sadly, sometimes when these studies are being made, also in Estonia, when the government was ordering these studies to evaluate the socio-economic impacts of building an SMR, they really looked at only the cases where everything goes well, right? You could say that the question was, how does nuclear benefit the neighborhood? And the answer was, it will benefit the neighborhood. But they didn't ask, like, what happens in case of emergency. So that was outside of the scope of the study. So then obviously you can say that we don't have any data on like bad outcomes because we didn't even ask these. So to get a clear picture, a balanced picture, you should also ask and simulate these very unlikely but then very high impact scenarios where an SMR is built and then malfunctions or melts down.
Yeah. Of course, in the past, it was said that nuclear power plants are completely safe, so don't worry. And then we had 3 Mile Island, which cooled down the interest some years, and then we have Chernobyl, even worse. And of course, that was the kind of the end of the Soviet Union, and a lot of things that didn't kind of apply to other countries that had nuclear power plants. It was said. But then Fukushima came, which is kind of a strong country when it comes to governance and regulations, etc. But even there, I think you have described how the a committee that was set up after the accident by the Diet showed that this was actually a man-made disaster.
Yeah, well, the discussions in Estonia go usually in the way that when somebody mentions Fukushima, the reply is that, well, we don't have tsunamis in Estonia, which is true. And in Japan, this particular power plant was supposed to be tsunami-proof, but it wasn't for some reason. And as the National Committee laid out in their final big report, it was a man-made disaster. So even though the safety measures were supposed to be in place, they were not in place because the operator and the regulator kind of played together and really didn't do their job properly. And now, of course, you would say that this is one-off event. This won't happen again. The industry has learned from this. And I would say, yes, of course, this won't happen again, but something different can happen. So there's so many variables here, and the human error is always there. The possibility is always there, and simply the risk involved in this is quite big. And now, when the discussion in Norway is to build several tens and tens of different reactors all around the country, then this risk multiplies because there are so many sites that you have to keep in check. So yeah, we might not have tsunamis here, but we might have some other issues related to climate change, for example. So extreme heat also affects nuclear power plants, storm surges and so on. So it's a much more complex picture than you would assume by looking at these kind of commercial brochures that the companies usually hand out.
Yeah. I think regarding Fukushima, of course, the consequences of the tsunami, 20,000 people died. But the survivors in huge areas could not go back to their home places. So they have lost their homes. And this is really a huge socio-economic and mental consequence, which is kind of under-reported, I think.
Yes, and if you talk to people in the area, you see that even if they can return to their hometown, it's not the same town anymore. So because so many people have left, these are basically ghost towns. So in theory, yes, you can return and continue your life as it was, but in reality, for a long time, it will be a much different area. And when we're talking about Estonia, which is a very small country, like if something even half of the size of Fukushima would happen here, half of the country would be like uninhabited.
Yeah, right.
So that's pretty big risk, and that's what we're also talking there in Estonia. That are we willing to take it? Do we need to take it? Because we might have alternatives as well.
Yeah, right. Yes, very good. Let's maybe move on.
I also wanted to on accidents. One more remark is that we know the big famous accidents, right? Infamous accidents that you mentioned, but there are also constantly several smaller accidents happening. But it's very hard to keep track of them because the kind of official databases are very hard to access, really. So the International Atomic Energy Agency doesn't exactly hide this information, but they also don't make it very public. Which make it hard. So academic articles have tried to assess so what is the safety of nuclear power, and the conclusion is less safe than you would expect.
I also think in Fukushima there has been a lot of discussion afterwards that the hotspots are not really, within a 50 kilometers circle. It's really very unpredictable in a way because the wind changed direction in the days following, so that you suddenly find high level of radiation quite far away. So this is really a big problem because it means you have to continue monitoring very carefully. And also the problem is that part of the area was forest, and while for the cultivated areas or the houses where they scraped off the surface for a huge area and aggregated it near the destroyed reactor. But still afterwards, so people could move back. But still, from these forest areas, you will generate radiation for years to come because you cannot get rid of it. So this is really much worse than you would think.
Yes, and the radiation is still the same. Is it a small reactor or a big one? There might be less of it, but this claim that the SMR developers are making that the safety zone of the SMR is only the fence around the power plant, that's a very wild claim that really has no basis in reality or facts.
I think in Norway, one special concern is that we have a huge fishing and seafood industry along the coast. Many of the planned nuclear reactors are on the coastline. And if you look at the experience from Fukushima, it was kind of full stop of fishing even for the whole country, for a period in the beginning. And then it was for quite a huge area along the coastline on the Pacific side. So it affected, the livelihood of so many people. And still, Norway removed the restrictions of import from Japan last year, I think together with EU. So that's more than, 13 years after the accident. So the economic loss, in this period of time is quite staggering. I don't know if the fishing industry and have really thought about this.
And the damage to the image will remain for many more generations, I guess.
Yeah. In Norway, it's called omdømmetap. It means they can test, and screen fish for again and again and again and again. But the customers don't want it because they can choose somewhere else where that doesn't have the name, stigmatic name of Fukushima. So you are stuck with it for a long time. So this is really more complicated than you would think. Okay, maybe we move on to.
And that leads to this question of who will then be responsible for this, right?
Yeah.
So if a politician takes a decision today that yes, our country is willing to go the nuclear route, and this is the point where all these other things unfold, and later you can go back to these steps, say, like, this is where it started. This is the root cause. And in Estonia, I was at the table when they were discussing, like, should Parliament support continuing the process of nuclear energy adoption. And I tried to make the same point very clear to them, that this is not like a small little non-important decision here. This is the decision. This is the turning point. If you say yes, you start this process that may lead to something very bad. Or you can say no, or you can say, let's wait a bit, because these SMRs are in such a hurry to be developed by the developers, but society has more time and more options available. So keep all that in mind.
I think in Norway there is a big discussion about the real future needs of energy. So, because that is a main justification for including nuclear. How is that in Estonia?
Yeah, I think the narrative has changed constantly over time, why we need nuclear. At first, the people promoting it were themselves quite big climate skeptics. They just thought that nuclear energy is a good source of energy. Then at some point it became this the narrative of saving the climate. Somehow with nuclear, even though it's the slowest and the most costly way of getting the CO2 to go down. And now it's about this fulfilling the energy need of the country. And there have been different estimations of what's the future energy need. One thing is for sure that when you go to the large-scale electrification, the energy need actually drops, because you're wasting less in terms of generating energy. But the big question is, like, what are the big projects that really demand energy? And in Estonia there was like this list of projects to be proposed, and when you really look into these projects, many of these are really hypothetical. So maybe a company somewhere made a statement that yes, they might be thinking in the future to build some factory in Estonia, but that was already factored in as this very certain need in the future. So when you take these projects out, it seems that actually we can manage easily without nuclear energy. So I don't know exactly the Norwegian case, but it might be something similar, that there's this imagined demand that now needs this source of new energy. And there's also this paradox here that in Estonia the promotion is that we will build one small reactor, but at the same time this reactor will bring with it a lot of new industry. So then you're quickly out of energy again. So then you need to build. So it's a circle that goes around and around. One narrative is that we need nuclear power, especially small modular reactors, to power these AI data centers of the future. And indeed, there's a boom now ongoing around the world to build these data centers, and they are very power hungry. But after the boom might become a bust, and this project might fall away. We see that these companies developing these AI models are not really getting much better and more like feature rich in their pursuit. We see that the markets are a bit worrisome already. That a lot of this hype is maybe on the top of starting to fall, and then after that this demand falls away as well. So I think again a good strategy is to wait a bit to see if it really holds up or not. My guess is that it's not going to hold up, and after that we'll have new problems, but this one will fall away. And many of these statements that big companies have made, like Microsoft doing some nuclear deals, Google as well, these are very much on the paper still. Like they have agreed to buy energy from a company developing a reactor which is nowhere near actually being deployed. So how to read these news is that they want to use fossil fuels, but they will use fossil fuels at the moment, but just to look very green, they say that, well, later we will switch to nuclear. So that's I think is the real narrative, but it's covered in this story of saving the planet somehow with nuclear in the future. And this narrative that we need nuclear power to power artificial intelligence that will then solve climate change is a very funny narrative, because we have already solved climate change. We know what to do, we're just not doing it as a society. So AI cannot help us here. It only makes it worse and a more difficult problem to solve. So don't hope for the solution from that. So the problem is not technical anymore, it's political.
Yeah. Actually, your background is informatics, isn't it? You have a PhD in informatics. So maybe you have a more basis to also assess the kind of this issue about AI coming up and how to deal with it.
Yes, and I also have a background in psychology, so the SMR topic is very much psychological. It's what people want to believe, because when you look at the hard facts, there are very little of them. What we know from the history of SMRs is that it's been a history of failure. They have been tried before. They always turn out to be not economical. But the promise is very nice. So they could be made cheaper, maybe built faster, and located in various different places. But as you get closer to these projects nearing any sort of construction, these projects tend to get cancelled. And we have seen it time and time again, and I believe we will see them many, many more times over.
I mean, another issue which is much discussed is the cost of the SMRs. So there are different kind of estimates, and of course this is future. So it's what do we know about kind of what is the best guess of how the cost will be for SMR compared with other, the traditional big nuclear plants?
The estimations vary widely. So, but it's what we do know is that they will be expensive. The question is only how expensive, and we haven't really seen any projects going to the actual phase of being completed. So the closest project currently still alive is the project in Canada, in Ontario. There's a Darlington nuclear power plant, and there will be a small SMR plant next to it. And so far, I don't have the exact numbers, but something in the tune of 1 billion Canadian dollars have been put in as subsidies and guarantees and loans from the government. And now they estimate the cost of this first unit. I think it was, when you translate it back to euros, was it something like 3-something billion euros? And it's a 300 megawatt reactor, so when you do the calculation, the price per kilowatt becomes very, 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 very high. Yeah. And similar calculations from Australia also show that it's possibly the most expensive way to produce energy. Although the promises are exactly the opposite, that it's cheap, it's fast, it's reliable.
Yeah. There was a surprising decision by the European Court in 2022, I think, to include nuclear among in a taxonomy of, so it means nuclear project can be funded from, it will be easier to get funding. So what is the situation about that? Because I know there were quite a lot of protests against it.
Yes. I did follow this process closely. It started out as a very noble project to get but the problem they tried to solve was that nobody knows what means green energy or green finance. So they tried to make a dictionary, a taxonomy. But this is the list of projects, technologies that are actually sustainable and green and for the green future. And at first, it was a long list, but it didn't include nuclear energy, mainly because of the waste issues. and it did not include fossil gas, for example, because that also has a methane issue. And then, as usually happens in the European Union, different member states start to campaign and haggle and demand their share. So, as usual, France, which is heavily reliant on nuclear energy, started lobbying for nuclear inclusion. Germany started lobbying for fossil gas inclusion. So, and then they found like a middle ground of let's include both. But they do have at least some sort of criteria there. If I'm not mistaken, they're taken as these transitional technologies. So they're only meant as a way to get to renewables. So it's not like a final solution, it's this transitional solution. And I believe you also need to have a final repository in some stage already before you could consider this a sustainable finance solution. So on paper, again, it sounds like it's green investment. When you look at the details, it becomes much more complex that many projects won't actually qualify because they don't have the repository. Most countries don't even have an idea of where could they possibly locate such a final repository. Yeah, so it's as I think it was Mr. Timmermans who said that, like, of course it's every country's decision if they want to go nuclear or not, but they have to consider that they will be stuck with this problem for a very, 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 very long time. So the quote had many, many very, very, very's in there. So it's not banned. Nuclear energy is not banned in the European Union, but also it doesn't have a free pass. So you really have to be hitting many of these check marks to be considered green. And the debate is ongoing because there were different committees in the European Union also who gave assessments to these reports, and one said that the waste issue is not covered at all or not in sufficient depth. The other said like, no, it's all good. So finally, that's how it came out at the moment. And I still think that there is some legal kind of objection to this from some member states. So basically, what the analysts said, those people, the finance people who actually would be using this taxonomy, the most said that, well, this is useless now. This is useless. It has everything, which means that we're back in the same situation, right? We don't know what's actually like considered sustainable and green because everything is now sustainable and green. So nothing is. So some bigger banks have decided to make their own taxonomy, and many of them don't include nuclear.
I think many would wonder what does sustainable mean when you look at nuclear energy. You cannot dig out uranium from the ground, and then you know, during the process in the nuclear power plant, you're generating a lot of very radioactive materials, which you can kind of never get rid of. So how is this sustainable?
It's a sustainable problem for a long time, for many generations. And yes, these discussions of how much uranium is there left in the world, like will it run out? There you can say that, well, if the demands go up, then the production might go up. But again, it's not so easy to just open a new uranium mine. There are places running out where you can make that. Greenland is a good example when they're banning and then considering and then banning again the mining of uranium. There are talks about these reactors that use the spent fuels of other reactors. These are again still in early research phase, so next couple of decades they won't be a thing, if ever. So yes, in the environmental movement, sometimes the word is used that it's renewables are fuel-free energy sources, so they don't need fuel while they're operating. And nuclear definitely does need fuel. Although like, nuclear proponents say that, well, it needs so little of it, which is also true. But you do need it, and without it, you don't do anything.
Yes, I think also another issue is that you kind of get, you create dependence if you are using a nuclear energy compared with sun and wind, which is free of charge and everywhere. So, and the supply line for uranium, for instance, is problematic.
Yes, if somebody has followed the sanctions that the EU has put on Russia, one sector that's always exempt from this is nuclear, because many EU countries are 100% reliant on Russian nuclear fuel. And yes, you could do it without the Russian influence, but then it would be more expensive again, which goes against the SMR logic of cutting costs wherever you can.
Yeah. Maybe one more about security or safety. In Norway, the Research Institute of the Defense, published a report earlier this year about security and nuclear plants, and listed a number of issues that we have to consider because of the kind of geopolitics these days, with from both in Ukraine and in Iran, and it's very unpredictable what will happen. I mean, if the world powers are getting in a real conflict, our countries, I think both Estonia and Norway, will be kind of in the middle. So is it wise to have nuclear power, which might well be targets in such a conflict?
Yeah, so I guess the whole nuclear industry was shocked when the Ukraine war started. That was the first time that there's like active war conflict in and around working nuclear power plants. So the International Atomic Energy Agency was really having a hard time really controlling the situation or even monitoring it. And up until this day, it's unclear like what the future holds for this. Sorry. The industry says that nothing has happened yet, nothing like too dramatic, but many of the safety measures that are like fundamental and basic are currently offline. So anything could happen at any point. And as the industry says, an accident anywhere is an accident everywhere. So that's the kind of unique thing with nuclear power, is that it's so much affected about what happens to any power plant in around the world. So when Fukushima happened, all other nuclear power plants were also kind of facing the same question: are we safe, or is our systems safe? And in the war situation, it's the same. I guess in Estonia, the biggest threat is that, like, where you do situate the SMR doesn't even matter much, because everything is in the shooting distance of some rockets. And the problem is that it might not be that the power plant will be blown up, it's rather than it will be taken over and used as a base and to connect to the Russian grid or something. So Estonian Defense Ministry also has made some reports. Most of these are secret, but what we do know is that they recommend not to build close to the Russian side of the country, because we won't be able to protect this very special facility in the case of like ground attack, at least.
In Norway, the first application is made from 2 municipalities on the southwest coast. And in the hearing, kind of looking into this application, the Ministry of Defense said that they are concerned because this nuclear plant is really close to the only fighter jet base in Norway. So that could be kind of dangerous in both ways. So I mean, both could be targets, and then one affect the other. So this was something that has been brought up, and I think also in Norway, this is security and safety issues have really been now taken more seriously. Yep.
Yes, and speaking to different regulators in different countries, their main worry with the SMRs is that the claim that they can be smaller, which means that possibly more safe, means that they could be situated closer to highly populated areas, for example. But that again increases the risk, or like the amount of people possibly affected goes up again. So the regulators are really demanding the SMR developers to prove extensively that these designs are actually as safe as they claim they are. Otherwise, we will have huge problems when it turns out that, like, we serial produce 50 SMRs and they all have some fatal flaw, and they're all close to city centers. So that would be a very expensive recall.
Yeah, I think also the how was this again? Yeah, maybe we move on to. Shall we have a little look at the climate change issues? How does it? I mean, it's claimed that CO2 is very limited from the nuclear power plants compared with other sources of energy. How is what do we know about this?
It depends on what you compare it with. It's much less than burning coal, and statistics say it's comparable to wind, because wind power also demands that you build and mine materials for it. So the life cycle seems to be similar in terms of CO2. And now the question, at least on environmental organization mind, is that we currently have too much CO2 in the air, and we need to reduce the amount we put in the air and do it quickly and do it cheaply as well. So we need to get the most effect for every amount of money we put in. And here, so far, renewables have shown that they are the most kind of optimal or effective way to do this, because when you look at big projects, big wind and solar projects can be made on time and on budget, sometimes even faster than the timeline promised. And when you look at nuclear projects, it is basically a rule that they go over time, sometimes twice or three times over time, and they go over budget. And now the claim with SMRs is that, well, these will be quicker and these will be cheaper. But this is a claim that has not been proven yet. What we do know from history is that even if you build a similar design nuclear power plant, it still doesn't make it faster, doesn't make it cheaper. What we do know of some recent small reactors, not modular ones, is that they still take a lot of time, 10 to 12 years to build, and they tend to not work very well because they're smaller, they're less efficient, and there might be some other technical issues as well. So currently there are a few reactors in Russia and China, which are very difficult countries to get good information out of. But the little we do know is that these small reactors work half of the time or less. So if we're talking about a 300 megawatt reactor, in reality you get out of this 150 megawatts. So, but you still pay the same price. So that makes it again twice as costly for the end product. This is something to keep in mind when discussing these things. And climate change, of course, affects the other way around, because nuclear power plants are the first installations to suffer from climate change. So if there is too much heat in the environment, you don't have cooling water anymore. The cooling water is too hot, so it doesn't work as a coolant anymore. Then you have to shut down or reduce production. So, and if it's near the coast, you might have problems. For example, in the UK, basically most of the reactors are in flooding zones, so there's a problem there. So if it's a fix, it's a very slow fix, and more likely it's a source of more problems in terms of climate change. But as the Estonian one report about the ways to generate climate neutral energy in the future assessed many different pathways, also the nuclear energy pathway, and concluded that the nuclear pathway could create this false sense of security that, okay, we made a decision, in 2050 we will have a nuclear power plant and we will transition into this type of energy. That makes this false sense of security that you have now made a decision and you don't have to worry about it anymore, even though that plan is very, very hypothetical and probably won't work. So that's why it's dangerous to only rely on this SMR story or narrative. So you have to look at what's available now, what's realistically available in the future, what is currently being built in the world, and what is these very hypothetical solutions that are maybe there to push some other narrative than actually solving the energy crisis.
Yes, I think some people are a bit concerned that maybe the SMR is really too expensive, so maybe not kind of feasible. But this process of getting approval or acceptance for SMR can then be, lead to legislation and the kind of systems put in place so that the big nuclear power plants can then more quickly be introduced.
Yeah, we'll see exactly the same story happening in Canada, in the US, where many projects kind of roll back to become large projects, large reactors. But then you are, again, stuck with the same issues you already know from history, that they will be over budget, they will be horribly over time. And then, I mean, for that, it's a more open discussion then, and more fact-based, because then you have the facts. There are bad facts or like poor facts of poor performance, but at least you kind of know what you're getting into. With SMRs, it's these promises, these hopes, but the facts are not there. So it's very hard to make a decision. I usually say that it's not a rational discussion anymore. It's like this: what do you want to believe? And if you do want to believe that somehow these reactors now will work, even though the couple of times in the past they haven't worked, then it's very hard to change that belief. But it's worth to try at least.
Yeah, it seems like kind of what to call it, increased interest in nuclear power is very much based on technology optimism, isn't it? So there are big uncertainties which maybe are not really explained well.
Yeah, I would say so. That's why this narrative probably has worked well in Estonia as well. It's a very tech-loving nation. And nuclear is being presented as this very complex thing, and complex equals good and innovative and new and futuristic. But it can also be meaning that it's unknown, it's untested. It could be very prone to malfunction. As you mentioned, some examples of like cyber attacks as well. So do we go the pathway that we know works, or we try to risk it and hope that this other pathway somehow works, even though the odds are against it terribly at the moment?
I think several environment organizations are also concerned in a way that nuclear power kind of deviates a little bit interest from very important energy saving activities, which should be a kind of basis in a way for the whole thing. And this discussion about how much energy do we really need and for what. So that piece of the discussion should also be, it should be based on the best data that we have, Yeah.
Yes, that's a extremely important societal discussion, and we should be having it, but we're not having it because that topic is deemed not sexy. So there's no innovation in saving energy, even though there is, because it's called demand side management, is demand side reduction. So if for days where you don't have too much energy, you just try to minimize the usage on a societal level. And we should be discussing this because people are doing it. They're doing it when the energy market goes crazy and the prices are like a few years ago they were like 4,000 euros per megawatt, which is like the maximum it can go, at least at that point. And there you could see in the statistics that people really reduced energy consumption, 10% nationwide in Estonia. So that's a massive amount. And they did it without being even like two-thirds of how to do it. They just figured out like, okay, I don't need to do this. I don't go to the electric sauna today, maybe tomorrow. So it is possible. And you can do it even more seamlessly, so people don't even realize that some things are in power-saving mode. And you would basically, yes, in Estonia, you would be able to control the demand side. I think it was also about 300 megawatts, which is one small reactor. So do we build a new nuclear power plant, or do we waste less energy? That's the option. And the other option is cheaper. It's actually like positive, net positive. Like you're saving energy, you're saving money, not spending it.
Yes, I think maybe one last topic is about civil society and how to make sure that civil society are involved in the process. Do you have some advice from Estonia how to make sure that happens?
It's good to be proactive, to ask to be included in all of these processes. In Estonia, because the Council of the Environmental Organizations has some sort of a relationship with the Ministry of Climate now, we do get included into these governmental panels and so on. So when the nuclear working group was set up, we can automatically got the invite. And in other processes, we have asked ourselves to be included. And then the question is like, who should dig into this topic, because the nuclear issue is very, very complex and detailed. So the good advice is to train yourself in different topics for different people. So some people may be very technical, some people may be inclined to like financial analysis, some people might be more interested in the civil society aspects. All of these are very important, and all of these are very complex topics, but especially in new nuclear countries, there are not many experts around, or if the experts are around, they are already in the companies pushing for SMRs, so they are not objective anymore. So the civil society has to step up and learn the language of nuclear energy as well, and then they can improve the outcomes of the decisions in the end, I think. And for policymakers, don't be afraid to include the public. It's very important. That's what the Aarhus Convention also says, that the public should be included, and they should get the information they need, not only from the companies, because the company will only say what's good for them, and the government should provide the full picture, or enable the civil society to give their comments. And also, like all of the options should still be on the table, so before something is decided. So if a country goes to nuclear power or not, this should be like a public debate and a very thought through decision. Also regarding the public like subsidies, SMRs tend to be marketed as this technology that is based on private money, on private capital, with no subsidies needed. But as we see in Estonia, the narrative changed in a couple of years from claiming to need no subsidies and the government saying, and we're not going to give subsidies. Then there was this phase of the company starting to ask subsidies and the government saying, no, this is a private business. You should do it in the market conditions. And now the company is saying that, well, we cannot build anything without government guarantees. And the government is now considering, should they give government guarantees to these large projects? So that's how it goes. I believe that will go the same way in every country. It's just the question is how quickly they get there. So it's good to discuss these openly, saying, are we willing to guarantee these loans for these companies that really are startups doing these very exotic designs that have not been proven anywhere in the world? How many billions are we willing to put into it? And if they say yes, all the billions, doesn't matter. We just want nuclear energy. It doesn't matter how much it costs. Then it's hard to stop that. But is it reasonable? Is it recommended or not? That's the question I asked in the presentation as well. I don't recommend.
I think you mentioned that it's very important for the civil society to have links with and to know independent experts who can not kind of affiliated with industry or maybe the government in some countries. I know there are some networks which may be helpful in identifying such experts who can then help in, for instance, in hearings or in assessing documents that are being discussed.
Yes, it's good to check at these countries where all these SMR projects are currently being developed or have gotten the furthest, because usually there you will find people who have tracked the project, have learned the details of it and the general logic behind it, and they're usually willing to share that information. So usually you get to these people through some other people. So how we met was through a chain of emails that you sent to some Canadian colleagues, right? And I kind of coordinate a loose group of people, also globally, who track projects from different countries, from Australia to France and UK and Canada and US. So I'm one central person to connect you further to other countries and other people, and politicians as well might find other colleagues in other countries who have gone through all these steps already and perhaps can say like what was good, what was bad, what to keep in mind, and so on.
Yes, of course, AMA was formed in the 70s at the time when the government was pushing for nuclear power through NVE. But it stopped partly because of AMA, which was a strong organization at that time, and of the Three Mile Island accident. But at the moment, the situation is very different. So it's the industry who is pushing, and the government is kind of very hesitant explaining that this is complicated and you have to wait for a national plan and don't rush it. And then this national plan has to be discussed in the parliament. So that's where we are in a way now. So of course we wonder what is the best way forward to approach, to try to inform better the population about what are the issues at stake, and maybe explain certain misconceptions or issues that are come up. So that is our situation. So it has been very helpful to have your visit and hear from Estonia what you have been doing. You are actually, in a way, more advanced to some extent when it comes to the process. So, yeah. Any final comments on what we should do or what we should not do?
Yeah, when I first got into these topics in around 2018, I also realized that much of these experts are from the 70s. from the first wave of skepticism around nuclear energy, and now it's the job of the next generations to also step up and ask these critical questions, and if need be, go and protest, because I've heard these arguments that, well, like, there's opposition to wind energy, so we cannot build wind energy, so let us build nuclear energy. But these people are lacking the historical memory of how big the nuclear opposition can be. And it will come back once these projects really take hold again, I think. And now the question is only, will the young people be able to get away from the screens and actually go to the real world and make an effort and an impact. So that's why I also go around that, because I know that the nuclear industry is also kind of trying to prevent that by especially targeting youth with these PR campaigns and events as well. So usually the environmental movement is not so well funded, so we try what we can to also spread the message and remind people that all these promises come with some very serious risks, and do we want to risk that? So yes, if you talk with some activists, they are feeling that nobody cares about nuclear topics anymore, but we're definitely seeing a renaissance of the debates, right? We don't see the renaissance of nuclear energy yet, and maybe we won't in the future as well. But the debates are ongoing, and everybody seems to have an opinion on this. But many times this opinion is not very well informed. So what we say in Estonia is that you cannot build a nuclear power plant with partial information. So you have to have the full picture. And as a person I know said that he first listened to me and thought I was crazy. Then he went to the presentation of the company and came back and understood me completely. So look at both sides, be critical of both sides, and then in the end, like, comes down to, like, what do you think is more likely, that who is giving you the truer information, the person who's trying to sell you this nuclear power plant, or the person trying to protect the environment? And usually doesn't get paid for it. You did give me a bun, so thank you, and coffee.
Maybe just to explain that AMA is against nuclear power, but we are actually for contributing to solving the climate crisis. So we are, in a way, trying to prevent nuclear power to deviate and to kind of slow down the very necessary changes that have to take place. So I think it's a more constructive than against.
Yes, because time and resources are actually limited. So you have to decide what to do, and that decision should be based on objective facts and past knowledge of what could work and what's suitable and what the public accepts. And of course, we don't want windmills and solar power panels everywhere. That's why we're talking about the energy consumption reduction as well, right? So there's a balance somewhere. Yes, and that's the question we need to ask. And if we just go blindly into this nuclear future, which, if it could even work, then we're still would be wasting a lot of energy, and we would still run out quickly, because it's this rebound effect that when you make something more efficient or something becomes more abundant, you start using more of it, and then you end up still stuck in the same problem, or even a bigger one in the end. So it's these discussions on many different levels. Sometimes it's good to take the big picture, talk about the large system, and sometimes it's helpful to just really dig into the nuclear SMR, and a particular SMR, and get the facts. So it depends on the situation. But yeah, I think we will have this discussion for a while. But one key moment would be the project in Canada, the first of a kind. Like Canadians don't care how much it costs; they will build it. They are determined to build it because they hope to export it. And then we will know what the first one will cost. We will see if it even works well enough. And if the price is like amazingly big, if it gets cancelled or if it does get built but works very poorly, then all the other projects will be under huge question mark because I don't see any other country willing to pay infinite money to build this thing to see if it maybe works. So it looks like a huge movement. Actually, it stands on some very small branches somewhere, these key bottlenecks. So we will wait and see, and in the meantime, spread information, spread awareness, and give the locals the ability to make their voices heard. Because every time you talk about nuclear energy, you have to talk about nuclear waste repositories. Oftentimes they go side by side because that's efficient, reasonable. So we need to take both of these topics into account, and that makes the picture even more complicated. So if it's hard to cite the nuclear power plant, it's even harder to cite the final waste repository. You know that in Norway already with the legacy waste, right? So learn from that experience. It's a valuable one.
Okay, maybe we should stop here. I think it was very helpful for us, for you to come and visit us in Oslo and sharing your experience with us. It's really a big inspiration, and we definitely need to stay in touch and continue sharing.
Yes, and there were many parallels between these two countries and these two situations, even more than I thought in the beginning. Right? So it's been a helpful visit for me as well to understand the situation and how it connects, sometimes quite directly to Estonia. So let us continue this.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to reach out, probably on the screen or somewhere there will be my email address as well. Because
right. Yeah.
always happy to get emails.
Yeah. I mean, the meeting yesterday in Litteraturhuset was streamed, and it's available on the homepage of AMA. So you can, and that includes your email address.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.